Ladies and gentlemen, I think that if you hear me, means that we are close to start. So therefore I would be happy if everybody would take a seat and we can start this important session, which is called Tribute to Mandela, which is, let's say, an expression which will never match the importance not only of the tribute, but of the man and of what he did. So if everybody can sit and take place, we can start. I would say that it's the centenary of Nelson Mandela, born, and this is on the 18th of July of this year, so 100 years. And this clearly cannot go unnoticed, simply because, and telling the Africans about this is obvious, but I have to say also, telling Europeans and telling people, certainly those of my generation for sure, but also younger and older, because Mandela has been the symbol of the fight against one of the most horrible behavior and crime, which has been apartheid. Not only because of the violence which it has produced, but also, and in particular, because of the model of society that was conveying. A model of society against which we have been fighting since decades, since centuries, and against which we have been building the European Union, if I may say straight in this way. Therefore, a man which made history. Apartheid as a system which was cruel and vicious, and the vast majority of South African population considered as a subgroup, somebody not of the same level of those which are ruling the class at that time, and which were white. The consequence has still created impact in the South African society. But, I mean, what Mandela did was precisely to turn, and this has been a reference for many other dramas around the world, to turn reconciliation into something which was driven by the interest of the country. Reconciliation is hard, reconciliation is difficult, but reconciliation is the only lasting, let's say, solution. And this was expressed in what Mandela identified when he fought against apartheid: justice, equality, and dignity. Very long walk to freedom, and a formidable work for freedom, telling lesson and teaching lesson to everybody, including in our countries. He was not alone in this, fortunately. A lot of people with him, a lot of people who died also in this path, a lot of people who sacrificed their own life for this. But it was, let's say, important that it was the leader of a community, and reason why he became the leader of the country after all. And I would like just to mention one figure among others, Albertina Sisulu, who would be also 100 years old in this year, if she were still with us. And when Mandela passed away in 2013, on the 5th of December, it's not just South Africa which was mourning, the whole world. And from that point on, is more Tata Madiba was the way in which everybody was calling, as a member of our collective family. And this value, this way of, let's say, of celebrating Mandela is not ceremonial precise, is a way to live and to revive what has been its own, let's say, its own experience. And, you know, if I may come to the very subject of these development days, which is gender, which is women, is another way to look at the liberation of our society, is another way to think how we can, thinking in terms of gender, enforcing freedom for everybody, and justice, and inclusivity. This is what we are talking about. And therefore, Mandela once he became the president of the country, he played a role in order to change the rules, because rule of law was embedded in this. And therefore, the new constitution of democratic South Africa adopted in '96, which explicitly guarantees women's rights, one of the most advanced in Africa and in the world. I think that this is something which should remain with us in this day. Celebration, yes, but action, practice, and what he did through its work and the work of its friends and people just fighting with him. Now, it's not for me to speak about Mandela, just to recall the fundamental features about this and why we are all passionate about Mandela, his legacy and what he did, but rather South Africans. And therefore, I would like in first moment to acknowledge the presence of Minister Lindiwe Zulu, who has come from South Africa explicitly for this. And I, on behalf of everybody, I think I very much thank her, because it's not an easy trip. It's not, it's something which shows how important is this moment of collective and sharing together. Minister Zulu joined the National Liberation Movement, the ANC, after the 1976 student uprising and went into exile in Tanzania. And you, Minister, also underwent military training to join the Liberation Army. And I think that you do not hesitate to go back to this if freedom is violated against, not only South Africa, but elsewhere. This has been always the way that we took the lessons from South African people. Therefore, Madam Minister, I would like to invite you to share with us your hints. Thank you very much.
This is not a traditional weapon. It is just a fan to make sure that I cool myself if I get too hot, and I think the women would understand me better. Thank you very much for the honorable introduction. Thank you very much for the invitation. I stand here representing the Minister of International Relations, Minister Sisulu, who was unable to make it here, but I was just too happy to take on the responsibility as she requested me to do so. And may I also indicate that I do not wish the exile and the training and everything that happened, I don't wish it to anybody. And I would like to ask all of us collectively as a world to make sure that nobody ever goes back to that experience, either of Nelson Mandela in prison or any of us who spent many of our years in exile. Believe me, we will not wish it upon anybody today. I stand here in front of you as I have been introduced. My name is Lindiwe Zulu, and I stand on the shoulders of women like Mama Albertina Sisulu. I stand here collectively together with my comrades and who are also here with me. I am not alone, the ambassador is here, and somebody that we are very proud of to be also in the United Nations, Osis Phumzile Mlambo Ngcuka. We are very happy to see you here. Me and her are here because there were women of South Africa who decided that we were going to join the liberation struggle and fight for a better future. I don't think that if we hadn't put our efforts together, I don't think Phumzile Mlambo Ngcuka would be where she is today. I don't think I would be where I am today. I am here because there were men and women in South Africa who dared to challenge the system, who dared to fight a system that was discriminatory, who dared to fight a system that was keeping the majority of the country outside of the mainstream of everything, whether it's politics, whether it's the economy, or everything. So I stand here in front of you to say to you, I am part of the generation of 76 that you referred to. I am a member of that Youth 76 who were nurtured by Masi Zulu, who were given the courage and strength to fight the system by Masi Zulu. I stand here in front of you because I was and I am part of that generation that knew that Comrade Nelson Mandela, with many, many other of his comrades, were languishing in jail. And so when 1976 happened, we took that as an opportunity for us to join the liberation struggle. I met Comrade Nelson Mandela for the very first time after his release when I was in the camps in Uganda. He visited us together with Mamwini, may her soul rest in peace, together with Comrade Thabo Mbeki, President Thabo Mbeki, who is still there today. They came to the camps to see us as the soldiers of the time. There were no child soldiers, please, who were just already grown-ups who were prepared to fight the system. I am humbled indeed and greatly honored to join the European Union Development Community at this 12th edition of the European Development Days 2018. On behalf of the people of the Republic of South Africa, I would like to thank you for convening this special session in honor of Nelson Mandela and Albertina Sisulu, who are the symbols of justice and representativity of the great ideas of freedom, fairness, democracy, and moral authority. To celebrate these stalwarts' lives, we need to stay true to their ideals, including their unwavering commitment to justice, equality, non-racialism, may I also say non-sexism. As you may be aware, 2018 is very important in the history of South Africa. We are celebrating 100 years since the birth of two struggle icons who dedicated their lives to the fight for a democratic, free, non-racial, and non-sexist South Africa. We are celebrating Nelson Mandela, the founding father of South Africa's democracy, under the theme, Be the Legacy, and Mama Albertina Sisulu as an important leader of anti-apartheid resistance who dedicated her life to the service of her people under the theme, A Woman of Fortitude. And I think Masi Zulu, where she is, when she looks at many of us today, both in South Africa and in Africa as a whole, I'm sure she can see a lot of women of fortitude. Both Nelson Mandela and Masi Zulu were champions of gender equality and women's empowerment, and their centenary celebrations call on all of us to recommit to their values and principles. All peoples across the globe are being urged to emulate and, I quote, be the legacy, and we, a woman of fortitude, by promoting freedom, justice, and democracy in honor of these centenarians' lifelong commitment to these ideals. In their lifetime, they championed the cause of women and girls tirelessly, and it was a pleasure for me yesterday to also have been part and parcel of the discussions around the issue of girls. And of course, I must say that young boys need us to be there for them so that it can be explained to them long before they get into the system of abusing women. As custodians of their memory, we as South Africa are sure that they will be honored to attach their names to the hashtag #SheIsWe Global Online campaign launched by the EU, which promotes the positive role of women in development. As the campaign emphasizes stories of peoples everywhere in the world and engages renowned personalities, activists, and members of the development community, both Nelson Mandela and Albertina Sisulu's stories add value to this campaign. South Africa and the European Union share historic links as they demonstrated by Nelson Mandela's first visit to the European Parliament on June 13, 1990, just 4 months after his release from prison. You see, he came to see you before he came to see us in the camps. Mandela came to receive the 1988 Sakharov Prize for Freedom of Thought in the defense of human rights, which he could not collect in 1988 as he was still incarcerated. He also used the occasion to thank the EU for its contribution in the emancipation of the people of South Africa from the oppressive apartheid system. Since then, relations between South Africa and the EU have strengthened, translating into a comprehensive partnership to promote development, peace, as well as social, economic, and political progress. We stress economic because we want Africa to also be given the opportunity to occupy the economy of the world. South Africa's partnership with the EU is built on the principle of Ubuntu, which means humanity, one of the core values underpinning Nelson Mandela's life and legacy. It is therefore befitting that this special session to celebrate the centenary of Nelson Mandela is held during the European Development Days to reflect on how to keep his legacy alive for the future. And we sincerely thank you for that. In this centenary of Mandela, South Africa saw it fit to put its candidacy to serve for the third time in the Security Council for the period 2019-2020, and we hope that you will keep that in mind. President Mandela's underlying commitment to the Pacific settlement of disputes and South Africa's tenets of its foreign policy aimed at achievement of an Africa and a world that is prosperous, peaceful, democratic, non-racial, and non-sexist is the driver behind the candidacy. This will guide South Africa's tenure of the Security Council towards a world that is just and equitable. South Africa will use its time in the Council to promote the maintenance of international peace and security through promoting the Pacific settlement of disputes, working towards achievement of the AU's Agenda 2063, which we are very committed to, and aiming to silencing the guns on the African continent, which I think we've done quite well. There's very few guns now, but they're still there. We need to work on it. Fostering closer cooperation between the UN, regional and sub-regional institutions, and other regional organizations like the EU. Addressing the root cause of conflict and promoting inclusive dialogue. The theme of EDD 2018 of women and girls at the forefront of sustainable development, Project Empower and Invest, as well as the European Union's commitment to gender equality and women's empowerment, underlies South Africa's constitutional obligation to promote and protect the rights of women in socio-economic and political development. The theme is also in resonance with Nelson Mandela's own aspirations to see women totally liberated from all forms of discrimination that hinder their full actualization, especially economic participation. That's why I'm a Minister of Small Business Development. I'm chasing that. Female entrepreneurship in sub-Saharan Africa are the highest in the world. According to the Global Entrepreneurship Monitor GEM 2016-2017 Women's Report, women's entrepreneurial activity globally is up 10%, closing the gender gap by 5% since 2014. Sub-Saharan Africa leads the way with its female entrepreneurship rates, the highest globally. 25.9% of the female adult population is engaged in early stage of entrepreneurial activity in the region. And some of the women presented themselves yesterday in one of our sessions, and would like to thank them for being resilient and for remaining in there and staying in there no matter how difficult it is. Women make out more than half of Africa's population, and yet they are excluded from the mainstream economy and lag behind men in participation in the internet economy. As governments, we need to ensure that women have access to finance, markets, and land so as to take part in opportunities for value creation. This also speaks to the back-breaking tools, long distances, and heavy burdens that entrepreneurial African women endure in their everyday endeavors to craft a living. Promoting and protecting the socio-economic rights and empowerment of women and girls were central to Nelson Mandela and Mama Sisulu's vision. As qualified law and health profession respectively, both Nelson Mandela and Mama Sisulu appreciated the human capital endowment of investing in quality health and education for vulnerable women, for women and girls, as well as all children. They were committed to good quality education, insisting that young people should put education first, even during their quest for democracy. This EDD 2018 program is therefore a great opportunity to remember Nelson Mandela and Mama Sisulu, and guided by the three thematic areas of this meeting, deliberate on how best to live their legacies and uphold the values that they espouse. A starting point could be the deliberate support by EDD 2018 to support investment opportunities in girls and women's education, especially in areas of science, technology, engineering, mathematics, as well as technical and vocational training. Despite constant arrests, harassment, and intimidation by the apartheid security forces, Sisulu never wavered in the determination to have a voice, and those of women she worked with heard. She was one of the women who participated in the August 9, 1956 Women's March, which shook the foundation of apartheid to the Union Building to protest against past laws. Today's societal challenges of poverty, unemployment, and inequality need all women of fortitude to stand up as those of 1956 as we proclaim #SheIsWe. These are a cause for reflection as we seek inspiration from the lives of the two icons to help us respond creatively to the challenges of today in order to have a better tomorrow. Indeed, EDD 2018 is opportune as it seeks to address these and other questions in the furtherance of Agenda 2030 on sustainable development and Africa's agenda, both of which put gender equality and women's empowerment at the center. South Africa's rallying call to be the legacy was heeded, for example, by the city of Ghent, which, among others, which the city and its partners are embarking on a project to develop a Mandela Promenade, a Sisulu Bridge in recognition of their centenary, including projects in honor of Miriam Makeba and Steve Biko. We welcome this noble initiative in honoring our stalwarts and hope this will be the impetus to trigger many such projects around the world. We also look forward to the European Union Parliament's adoption of the resolution of the centenary of Nelson Mandela. This included in the joint outcome of the recent SA-EU 25th Interparliamentary meeting held in Strasbourg, France in April 2018. Excellencies, I hope this special session will encourage EU member states and all other nations of the world to join South Africa in the year-long centenary celebration of its icons and use this period to revive the spirit of active citizenship, collective responsibility, and accountability. I also wish to reaffirm South Africa's commitment to the partnership agreement with the EU, and we look forward to working together to achieve those ideals of Nelson Mandela and Mama Sisulu, especially towards the full and meaningful empowerment of women and girls. In conclusion, we invite you to join us as we celebrate the centenary and the Boza Theatre in Brussels with a 100-piece youth orchestra called Miyagi on the 12th of July 2018 respectively. Much work lies ahead for the global community to finding ways to be, I quote, be the legacy, especially to champion the cause of women and girls' empowerment. Even though it may seem to be like a daunting task, but spurred on with the wisdom of Nelson Mandela, I quote, it seems impossible until it is done. I thank you.
This is a gift for me. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam Minister. Now we have another special guest who has been Vice President of South Africa, the first woman to hold that position in South Africa, and who is currently the Executive Director of United Nations Entity for Gender Equality and Empowerment of Women. So therefore, a sort of double hat. The one in the past, Vice President of South Africa, and the one of the President at the head of the agency, which is basically dealing with women. I would like, therefore, to ask my sister, Phumzile Mhlabuthuka, to come and to share with us her experience. And just to recall that you since '94, no? Since the democratic breakthrough, you became member of parliament, and you have been always on the forefront of the political life, not only in parliament, but also in the government as vice president. And then now you are turning, since some years, your energy, your vision, your passion for women in the world through your leadership at the UN agency for that. So therefore, Phumzile, please take the floor and let's share with us your experience and your wisdom. Thank you.
Thank you, brother. I'd like to thank the EU Commission for the opportunity for us to have this celebration. Appreciate the presence of Commissioner Mimica, who has supported our work to address all forms of gender inequalities, and was also recently a guest of the South African government, where I know they also met with Minister Lindiwe. Thank you, Minister, for your words. And I also want to acknowledge the many ministers who are here from different countries. Like Minister, I thank you for giving us an opportunity to celebrate this day, to pay tribute to two stalwarts of the South African struggle, Mama Albertina Sisulu and Nelson Rolihlahla Mandela. Albertina Sisulu is not a hero to us because she was married to Walter Sisulu. I'm short, eh? Is not a hero to us because she was married to Walter Sisulu, who was in prison together with Mandela. But she's a hero to us because she's a giant in her own right, on whose shoulders Mandela and Walter Sisulu stood. When they were in prison, together with many other heroes in South Africa, when many had to go into exile, when political life in South Africa was strangled by the apartheid regime, it took women like Albertina Sisulu to keep the hope alive in South Africa. She, Winnie Mandela, and many other women were the ones who looked at the apartheid system in the eye. In fact, sometimes in South Africa, we say that the apartheid regime was afraid of those women more than they were afraid of it. They never winced when they needed to go and confront those barrels of guns, especially when the lives of children were at risk. They were the ones who campaigned for the release of the political prisoners, and they kept the memory of all those who were in prison alive. Mama Sisulu, therefore, remains one of those heroes in South Africa who lived a life that had a purpose, fought with a purpose, and no amount of difficulties deterred her from focusing on the prize of freedom. They had a lot in common with Madiba. Both of them were focused on the lives and the well-being of children, focused on education, focused, of course, on inclusivity and freedom. Mandela represents one of a kind in the history of South Africa, and indeed in the history of the world. In many ways, he was ahead of his time. He believed in gender equality and spoke about it before gender equality was part and parcel of the vocabulary as it is today. He was also focused on ensuring that our struggle was about reconciling the people that were otherwise fighting rather than sustaining the hostilities between people. In fact, he used to say, we will know that we have achieved our liberation when we've liberated our enemies. As long as our enemies have not become partners in our road to liberation, our task is not done. Of course, that was very confusing to us as young activists, because sometimes we thought that the hostilities were going to be sustained and we had to win and win at all costs. And for him, it was not the winning at all costs that was important. It was the reconciliation of all the warring factions that was more important than one winning and one losing. Mandela was also very much a humble leader. He had the presence of greatness that was steeped in humility. You could be in his presence and not even feel that you were the smaller person. He had a way of being self-effacing and making jokes about himself that used to relax you in case you were intimidated by his stature and presence. I remember when he got married to Mrs. Machel, a journalist asking him, so now that Mrs. Machel is going to be your life partner, is she going to be Mrs. Mandela? And he chuckled in his wonderful smile. He says, actually, he has not asked me to change my name to Machel. I don't see why she should change her name too. That was Mandela vintage. The legacy that Mandela leaves with us is that also of international solidarity. Because of the price that Mandela, Tambo, and the other leaders of our struggle put on international solidarity, South Africa had lots of friends around the world. Apartheid was won because of the friends that we had around the world. And we're sitting here today, embraced by you all because of the friendship that was created by these leaders who had a vision. They also were very much focused on the importance of a just struggle, so that at the end of the struggle, you had a constitution that respected its people, that worked for its people, and we were able to adopt that constitution. We are working hard to make it work for the people. I will the first one to say it is not easy to live up to the constitution, but the fact that we're able to draft and to adopt that constitution itself was an important milestone. So in every generation, we find that there are these people who inspire us. There are many people of my time, and I'm sure some of you in this room, when you have been lonely in your quest for justice, whatever it is that you are struggling for, where you could have been in prison, where you could have been fighting a system that you felt was invincible. Many of us found solace in reading a book by Mandela and telling ourselves, if he could stand it, I'm sure I can take it one more day. As a member of his cabinet, I also was in awe of this old man who could work around the clock. Sometimes when I would get home tired from having done government's work, and you receive a message, that time it was before emails or a phone call, Tata didn't mind calling you at midnight to ask you about a cabinet memo, and you'd ask yourself, if he is still awake, who am I to fall asleep? I have not been in prison for 27 years, and I'm much younger. I better get my job done. In that way, he instilled a very high work ethic on all of us. We remember him and appreciate him alongside other heroes of our time. Robert Schuman for the EU, I think, is an important hero that helped to create the EU. We have Mahatma Gandhi, another hero that we revere. We have Mother Teresa, another hero that we revere. We have our own Mama Sisulu that we revere. We have Martin Luther King. These are the people that I hope will continue to inspire us in this generation. As South Africa prepares to be a non-permanent member of the Security Council, the vote is on Friday. All I want for us is to represent the values of Nelson Mandela in that Security Council, to make our presence in that Security Council a moment to relive his values in a multipolar, much divided, trade war-inflicted world. Try to see that in our small way, we can bring about the values that should underpin multilateralism, which we are losing. I am hoping by being there, we will be able to affirm the work of people like Dr. Mukwege by making sure that Resolution 1325 is lived by the values and the work of the Security Council. I am hoping by being in the Security Council, we will make sure that we contribute towards finding a solution to deal with the scourge of non-state actors that are raining havoc in different parts of the world with the kind of violence that we are struggling to contain as nations of the world. I'm hoping by being in the Security Council, we'll revisit the issue of South Sudan, Central African Republic, and make our contribution towards finding resolution in the challenges that is faced by these countries. I am hoping that by being in the Security Council, we will make sure that our contribution will be about pushing for consensus, using our soft power, something that in South Africa we have tried so hard to preserve ourselves, so that when there are disagreements over issues that should unite us, we fight for the middle road that can bring everybody together. A tall order, but let us try and be equal to the giant that gave us our freedom. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Fumsile, for your sharing your stories about Mandela. Now, it's hot, but it risks becoming hotter now because we have somebody special who has agreed to take us a sort of musical trip and a vocal journey alongside Madiba. And I think useless that I introduce Mr. Youssou N'Dour, please.
Thanks.
Oui, ça sera encore plus.
Hey.
dëgg gërëm naa la fàttewuma la nëbbutuma la ma ki la doon toppat soo mënee defal ko bi lépp baaxi yow laa doon gis bi ma sonne yaa ma doon dig ba ma réeree dëgg gërëm naa la fàttewuma la nëbbutuma la ma man la seen doom jee fàttewuma defal ko bi lépp baaxi si wow yow laa doon gis bi ma sonni yaa ma doon dig bi ma reene yi dëgg gërëm naa la fàttewuma la nëbbatuuma la man la seen doom fàttewuma la nëbbatuuma la man la seen doom Kila don toppatoo soo dañee defal ko yow laa doon. Thank you. Thank you. My hope is in you. I wanna watch your spirit touch the sky. So much we can do. My hope is in you. If you take your love and fly away, I know you'll make it too. 7 seconds away, just as long as I stay, I'll be waiting. It's not a second, 7 seconds away, just as long as I stay, I'll be waiting. Man Youssou N'Dour maa ngi woo bépp doomu Afrique ñu bokk xalaat bokk gis-gis bokk yéene sans frontière boole sunu am te liggéey waratuñu nangu kenn ñëw di ñu féewale bul jiite réew foog ne la fa nekk yow yaa ko moom jiit bu dëgër dala war a fekk nga bëgg sa réew te sàkku ndimbal dimbal na ca fekk loxol we are jant bi fekkee waaw na la fekk jóg ak sa jumtukaay bëccëg bi gaaw ñett du te ñaar mën kenn waaw yoon wi sore na te metti na nañu ko waaj ba du noppi xalaat lañu defoon maam ya sa xol dootul ne te dootoo xalaat lu dul fen toog su ma sañoon Afrika benn nit moo koy jiite ñu boole thinking, walk together, keep on walking. Sheikh Anta Diop, Kwame Nkrumah, Stephen Biko, Nelson Mandela, all you people. Thank you very much. It was a pleasure. On keyboard, Mr. Ibu Sise. Thank you very much. It's a pleasure. C'est un grand plaisir de chanter.
It is indeed a tremendous pleasure to sing for Mandela.
Wait. Okay, one more song. You may know this song. One more. chanson.